I've recently been looking into a lot of and just thinking about like theories in physics. Like, can we get like a mathematical theory of everything? Do you think that philosophy could ever have that kind of goal? Is philosophy the kind of field that would have
Yeah.
a theory of everything?
Yeah, that's a big question, and it's a more delicate and subtle question than we tend to realize. We tend to think that there are we tend to fall into a false dichotomy that either we can formulate something in an explicit statement that's definitive and resolves the problem so that no more thinking is required, um, or it doesn't, and all we have are interpretations and discussions, and we sort of spin our wheels in empty space and don't get anywhere. And it seems like those are the alternatives, but in fact, those are much more recent alternatives, if I can put it that way. Um, and this is why I find the question of what is the nature of truth such a fascinating question, because the way you interpret the nature of truth is going to affect your judgment on these sorts of things. If you think of truth as something like an objectively real space that you enter into, you're going to see that it doesn't make sense to think that it's something that you formulate in a final statement. You realize it's something that you have to become present to. You have to go out of yourself. And join with others. In fact, in a way that abides. It doesn't have to have a definitive ending. But that doesn't make it. That's precisely because it is objective. It's not a threat to the objectivity of truth. It's something we indwell, to use the language of Michael Polanyi, a very interesting philosopher from the last century. We indwell the truth, and if that's the case, then this false dichotomy falls away. I actually think it's crucially important to think that there are things that we can know. There is such a thing as absolute truth. I think all truth is actually absolute, and there are things that we can know with a kind of definitive certainty. Um, but that doesn't mean that we can formulate it quantitatively, say, or give it. It's certain, but it still requires our participation and our involvement, and it still um, yields a kind of inexhaustible fruit of reflection and ever deeper insight.
It's interesting. I mean, would you say that we can never really have or just acquire truth? So this, I mean, but also, you're saying okay, it's objective, but
Mhm.
we can also get it's beyond us, but we can get into it. It's
There you
funny
go.
because I mean, because I've been grappling with philosophers thinking about can we actually ever get to and touch truth
Right.
and touch reality, and you could take a position where it's all in us anyway. It's just subjectivity, in which case we kind of have it, but then it's a kind of isolated one that's
Mhm.
maybe not that valuable or reasonable anyway. But then if it's beyond us, how do we ever get to it?
Yeah.
And then I'm just what I'm hearing is kind of like a synergy between the two, where we're
Yeah.
still us. We can, but we
Right.
can
No,
get to something beyond us.
exactly. I mean, think about it. It's like swimming in the ocean. You enter into it, and you. It's not that you remain. I mean, but you would never say that it's yours. You would never say that you've somehow captured it. I mean, precisely the contrary. Your experience of entering into the ocean is entering into something that's infinitely vast, but at the same time, you have absolutely no doubt that you are wet. You are completely immersed in it. There's no doubt there. In fact, the certainty is of being wet coincides with this opening to the infinity of the reality. So it's the question is whether we possess whether we can capture truth as a possession, a private possession. And I would say no, but that doesn't call into question its certainty. That doesn't call into question its objectivity. Its uh, trustworthiness, its reliability. To the contrary, um, uh, it's precisely why um, our participation in it is so certain and so um, yeah, um, trustworthy.
Hmm.